With the alpha phase finally ending and beta just around the corner starting next reset, I thought now is the perfect time to take a look at all of the changes thus far coming in Midnight to all of the healer specs and assign who I believe are the two biggest winners and two biggest losers of the healing specs so far. Now there are so many changes and even reworks happening in Midnight, and it's an exciting time to be a healer because healing as a whole is just going to change drastically, but based on what we've seen in the first iteration of the alpha and then how they've changed based on our feedback, I think now is just a great milestone to kind of look back and see where things are at. That being said, everything discussed in this video is going to be based on my opinion of all of the changes so far, and I really want to hear your feedback. What do you think is the biggest winner and biggest loser so far of all 7 healer specs coming into Midnight beta? Let me know that and your thoughts on what I say down below in the comments. But without further ado, let's go ahead and kick this video off with what I believe to be one of, if not the biggest winners in Midnight, and that is Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest is looking so sick coming into Midnight. They're seeing so many good changes. A lot of stuff is removed, like Fade, Shadow Fiend, Renew. A lot of things are removed. Sure, everyone's getting pruned. But what they're adding in its place is like such a dynamic version, a new version of Discipline Priest. So for starters, what I think is going to be a very cool change and a very welcome one is they're changing Evangelism. So now you no longer press Evangelism at the end of your ramp to extend all of your atonements, but instead you press it at the beginning so that you can spam Radiances to easily, like super easily, blanket the raid in atonement. On top of that, Evangelism also has some very good application in a Mythic Plus environment because, you know, you pop Evangelism now before the damage, and then you can spam Power Word Radiance during the damage. I mean, it is just insane how they're reworking this. I'm very excited to get in and play with this. Now, on top of that, to kind of like double dip in this and kind of bridge into the Shadow realm, I guess, is Inner Light and Shadow, which I think is a chef's kiss of a talent. Now, I have been thinking that they should add in a stance switching healer, like one that basically completely behaves differently when you press one button and then you can toggle to completely play differently. And now Discipline Priest is kind of like the best example of that in the past, where you pop Shadow Covenant and all of a sudden you're this like shadow damage healer. But Inner Light and Shadow is really taking that and running with it, and I think it is a beautifully executed way to do so. So while you're toggled into your Inner Light, you're just doing more healing. So your Power Word Radiances, after you pop Evangelism, boom, they're doing more healing. All of your Flash Heals, your Pleas, which are kind of like your now your cheaper version of Flash Heal if you need to apply atonements that way, they're just doing more healing. But the moment that you're done with all of that healing, or you're going to rely on a big Shadow ramp, you just hop into Inner Shadow, which is a very easy replacement, like a very easy to understand and execute replacement for all the buffs like Schism, like Shadow Covenant. All of those things that are getting removed are now just, hey, hop into Inner Shadow, you're going to do more Shadow damage, do more atonement healing, bada bing, bada boom, you're just better. Like, this is such a chef's kiss way to design Discipline Priest, and I am so excited to test it. On top of all of that, the way that they're reworking the hero talent trees, they're basically completely removing Premonition because it's an awesome spell. It's one of my favorite spells in the game right now. I've grown to love Premonition and how it cycles through the effects. But you know, in the world of pruning, trying to simplify things, Premonition of Piety is one of the passives that I am very happy is kind of sticking around. So basically, you do more healing and your overhealing is redistributed. That way it's not gone to waste. And it's basically remaining in Oracle as a passive, which is beautiful because if you wanted to play Oracle Disc Priest, like in Raid or Mythic Plus, the new Evangelism plus staying in Inner Light for those moments is going to make you do so much healing. You're going to redistribute so much of that healing. It's just going to be a nice little ramp up. And then you can hop into your Shadow and then start blasting that way. So I think that this is a fantastic iteration of Disc Priest, and yeah, like I said, I'm not let down by anything that I see here. And also, before we move on to the next healer, maybe the first loser, I don't want to skip past Greater Smite. Now, as you probably know, in modern day WoW, and you know, in all the seasons past, Discipline Priest has these kind of complex ramps to fully maximize. You have to do these spells in this order and not cast this before this, that way you don't waste this buff in order to ramp effectively. But the way that Greater Smite is designed is now each time you smite, you're just going to gain a buff that's going to ramp up your smite damage. So it makes your ramps very easy to execute and understand, where you just have to hop into your shadow form, drop your Mindbender, and then start spamming smite, use your penances, and you're not going to lose this Greater Smite buff. It's just a beautiful, like, honestly, like, everything about the Disc Priest changes, in my opinion, are just fantastic. On top of that, with the pruning of all the passive effects that you have to ramp up, instead they're kind of removing Mind Blast's Schism. So when you Mind Blast something, it didn't do as much damage as it could. Instead, it then weakened that enemy so that you did more damage to that enemy, which made it kind of awkward in AoE scenarios. You had to pick that perfect target right at the start of your ramp and then blast on that Schism. They're removing that and they're replacing it with just a more powerful Mind Blast, so you don't have to be as picky and choosy about your target in AoE scenarios. Your Mind Blast just does more damage. Now, granted, this probably is like a worse way to skill express in your ramps because your Schism just doesn't exist anymore. However, one thing that's kind of cool is that, they're amping up the damage that your Mind Blast does. It's going to do a massive smack for the start of your ramp to really blast health bars up and just capitalize on all those atonements you're getting from Evangelism. But also, if you're taking Voidweaver, you're getting new talents like things like Overwhelming Shadows that are going to further increase your Mind Blast damage and are just going to look super sick. And beyond that, they're removing Schism, but you're gaining more Atonement healing from Voidheart for longer thanks to the new talent Touch of the Void. So I think both hero talent trees, beautifully designed, all of the base kit changes, I'm just so impressed with. I think the gameplay loop is fantastic. Very excited to see what Discipline Priest does in Midnight. Now, moving on to what I believe probably one of the two worst losers coming into Midnight, and that is Holy Priest. Now, to be honest, the term loser doesn't really kind of express what I want to get across, so let me explain really quick. They're not losing the most. I definitely don't think Holy Priest is losing the most. I just don't think that, based on what we've seen, Holy Priest currently isn't looking to be like it's going to be like a meta-defining healer in terms of, like, specifically Mythic Plus. Now, why do I say that? Well, in current WoW, we haven't seen a tier where Holy Priest's kit has been well designed enough to be a Mythic Plus meta healer in a very long time. I mean, maybe like a little glimpse of a cool build with Boon of the Ascended back in Shadowlands, but ever since then, like, Holy Priest has just been completely out of the Mythic Plus meta discussion. So when it comes to these giant reworking, overhauling changes coming into Midnight, you really need something to kind of push it in that direction. Give it something that's going to bring it into that meta discussion. And why I'm calling Holy Priest a loser is because I just don't think they're gaining, based on the list of changes that we've seen throughout the alpha phase. I just don't think any of those changes are going to bring it further into that discussion. Now, they are getting some very cool things, a lot of good things that are going to, further enhance their AoE healing in a raid environment, like their Apex talent tree. Basically, your Prayer of Minnings are going to give you a small chance to make your next flash heal, then cause an AoE pulse heal called Cosmic Ripple, which is already in their kit. I mean, it's cool. It's more AoE healing, but we've kind of seen in seasons past that healing isn't alone what makes you meta. I mean, like, every healer can do insane healing ramps, including Holy Priest. Holy Priest does insane healing in Season 3 of War Within. It's just not enough. That's not what is required of a healer to be meta, honestly. Now, I think the closest thing that we're seeing in terms of what could potentially give it like a leg in the race of being meta in terms of Mythic Plus is the talent Ultimate Serenity. So how this works is you're getting rid of Sanctify, your holy word. That is that ground effect, that circle that you apply, which already kind of is pretty, like, meh in a Mythic Plus environment. A lot of times there's probably another global that you could be casting that just does more healing than it, or does more effective healing in the moment than Sanctify. But instead, you're removing that button entirely, but you're adding an effect to your Serenity, that giant spot healing holy word, which is that when you spot heal someone, it also will blast AoE based on that healing, which is actually very good, because now if you're thinking of like a big damage ampy moment, you know, before, in order to do single target and AoE healing, you'd probably have to like weave in Sanctifies and Serenities to get that full effect. But now you don't. You just have to press your Serenity and you're getting both effects in one. So it's going to look pretty good in like a big damage ampy phase where everyone's taking big damage. You can spot heal the lowest person and get a big AoE heal proc on everyone for free, all for the price of one global. That alone is very cool. Very good, very fantastic, and actually very good for the healing profile of a Mythic Plus environment. However, like I said earlier, doing healing, having a good healing profile, unless it's broken, like actually broken amounts of healing, like current day Resto Druid, it's not enough to bring you in the meta discussion. And another kind of bone to throw, or another thing to mention in favor of Priest, is hey, now everyone's losing their kick except for Resto Shaman, so at least Priest isn't alone in that category. So maybe not having a kick won't solely take them out of that meta discussion. But since I've already discussed Disc Priest in this video, I think Disc Priest obviously is the biggest the biggest competition for Holy Priest, and all of the utility except for a single target stun that Holy Priest brings, Disc Priest also brings. And I think, like I've already kind of mentioned, Disc Priest rework and Disc Priest redesigns are looking to be not only more fun, more engaging, and a win in that category, but I think they're just out, performing Holy Priest changes so far in the alpha, in my opinion. Now, another massive win for Holy Priest, though, is, like I mentioned on the Disc Priest tree, with them removing Premonition, but keeping Piety as a permanent passive that you have, this actually is really solid for Holy Priest, because if you get those big ramps where you're using your new extra charge of Prayer of Mending to spam Prayer of Mendings, you also have your Mastery on everyone, you're getting those free bonus procs of healing from your Serenities, you're going to be doing a lot of overhealing on some targets, especially with how massive your Serenities can be. So all of that overhealing redistribution is fantastic to have permanently. Now you don't have to wait a couple minutes to cycle back to Piety to get those massive ramping heals. Instead, you just have it permanently. And on top of that, we already know in modern day WoW that Piety, or Premonition of Piety currently, plus Guardian Spear is just a great ramp in itself. So yeah, this alone is actually a very big bonus for Holy Priest, but really, this isn't enough. I don't think this is enough. I definitely think Holy Priest is next in line for a potential actual full-on rework like Holy Paladin kind of got back in Dragonflight, because it just feels like it's kind of lacking in terms of utility. Yes, it has great raid utility. It has some good utility, but it's not nearly enough to bring it in that utility Swiss Army knife discussion. And on top of that, its damage is very heavily committal. You have to be able to commit a lot of globals to get good damage out, whereas something like Disc Priest, Mistweaver, maybe even Holy Paladin nowadays, which maybe we'll talk about later in this video, spoiler alert, all of these other specs can just passively do this damage every pool without losing any HPS. Holy Priest in specific loses a ton of HPS by committing globals to do damage. So these things alone definitely do kind of hurt it, and these are weaknesses in modern WoW, in current WoW, that aren't seeing solutions or remedies coming into Midnight. So that's kind of alone why I have it listed as a big loser, just because it's not gaining strengths where its weaknesses are, like some of these other healers are. And for the second loser of Midnight, in my opinion, guys, it just wouldn't be a genuine video if we didn't put Resto Shaman in this category. I'm sure a lot of you guys either saw this coming or were screaming at me when I didn't talk about it first. But yeah, Resto Shaman has seen a lot of backlash in their changes, because when it comes to pruning, they definitely are one of the biggest offenders of who's being pruned the most. And as much as I personally I'm not really dooming about the state of Resto Shaman at all. I feel like they're so awesome in modern WoW. They could stand to lose some cool things and still be a very cool spec. It's just very concerning, the approach that's being taken toward Resto Shaman, in my opinion. So when it comes to pruning, like I said, they are kind of being hit almost the hardest, if you ask me, of any healer. They're losing some very iconic and very cool like fun to play around spells like Cloudburst Totem, you're now forced to take Healing Streams Totem, which, Healing Streams seeing a lot of love, honestly. Like, admittedly, in these changes, it's seeing a lot of love with like new totemic. Their apex talents are playing with Healing Stream Totem. Like, it's Healing Stream's going to be really good, don't get me wrong, but losing the option to go Cloudburst Totem, like, this is one of mine and a lot of like long-term Resto Shaman's favorite spells in the entire game, and it's just gone now. Like, you just don't have it as an option. Same with Wellspring. I mean, Wellspring hasn't really seen much love. I guess, like, when's the last time I even talented into this? I guess like Shadowlands, maybe? Shadowlands, when you played like Chain Harvest and stuff, you played this in your raid build. So it's been a long time since people have played Wellspring, but this is still such an iconic, such a awesome Resto Shaman spell. Like, you send out like a giant wave of healing. Like, they're just losing a lot of good stuff. On top of that, all of these like passive talents that just have built up and added so many powerful effects to all of your spells as a Resto Shaman also just gone. So you're probably asking, like, what is staying? What have they decided is gonna remain? Well, your one of your main cooldowns, Ascendance. This is like your iconic Resto Shaman spell, I guess Shaman spell, that you become this Water Ascendant. Everything that you do is going to be replicated on your allies. No longer. It is actually getting redesigned, and man, this one really is either it hurts and it's a head scratcher. So basically, you're just it just changes how your casts work. So your Riptides, your Chain Heals Healing Waves are just going to be doing more healing, and also apply a Riptide to the target that you hit. It's really just a lame version of what Ascendance could be, and Modern Ascendance is sick. Like, such a sick spell. You feel so powerful when you press it, but this kind of just like makes you have to Riptide, then Chain Heal, Riptide, then Healing Wave, and like just that Healing Wave, just that single target Healing Wave is more powerful, not replicating onto all of your allies. It is just a head scratcher. Like, no better term for it. It's just a head scratcher. On top of that, when they first announced the pruning, the first iteration of the alpha, they had a couple more spells listed as ones being removed, and they heard our feedback that they're just taking away too much from Shaman. What cool spell do they give us back? What cool spell are they like, you know what? We went too far. Let's give Resto Shaman one of their spells that we're taking away back. They gave Resto Shamans back Unleash Life. Probably the lamest spell in their whole spell book, if you ask me. This button, at least like in the past few seasons, is simply just there for the buffs that it gives you. Like, the button in and of itself is so boring. And don't get me wrong, in order to kind of bring this button back into the game in a way that's supposed to excite us players, they are juicing it up quite a bit. Like I said, in modern day WoW, in current WoW, this button, who cares what its text box says? You simply just press it for the ancestor most of the time, it is not for itself. Like, imagine if you just cast like regrowth as a resto druid, not for the healing that regrowth did, but for some random passive that it gave you, like a haste buff or something. That's how lame Unleash Life is. But like I said, they're juicing it up quite a bit. But a turd wrapped in a Christmas wrapping, or Christmas, what am I trying to say? If you took a turd and put it in a Reese's wrapper, it's still a turd, man. Like, it's still a turd. Now, if they would have, like, I don't know, kept Healing Surge or something, because Healing Surge is also getting replaced, and in place of Unleash Life, and built their tier set around it, Healing Surge is like it's a beloved Resto Shaman spell. Unleash Life is not, from what I know, and from my experience as well. So, bringing it back and then announcing that they're just going to kind of build the tier set around it is like, I don't know, man. This is the most head-scratcher move that I've seen across all the healers. Now, look, it's not all doom and gloom. Like I said, I am not dooming about the state of Resto Shaman. I just think that the performance is going to be there. The spec is going to be powerful, but the foundation of what builds up Resto Shaman and how it behaves is not there, in my opinion. So what do I mean by the performance is there? Well, I've kind of hinted at it already, but Resto Shaman is going to be the only healer in the entire game with a kick. And a lot of people think, oh, this is not really going to make a big impact. The whole game is supposed to be changing to where interrupts aren't going to be as important. And while that's true, um, it, having a fifth member in a party have a kick will make moments where, like, say, like your tank and your fury warrior both use their interrupt at the same time on a cast. Now you have another backup, just a backup plan in wind shear. You still have your kick. Now, what I would argue is the best talent in the entire game is season wins in current WoW, because it's so broken, especially in this dungeon pool. Like, picture yourself in Priory. You just kick all the holy bolts, all the holy smites, and then all of a sudden you just have like a perma 30% damage reduction on holy damage in that dungeon, which in Priory is broken. So season wins is very strong. However, it is also getting gutted. So although they still have their kick, it is now going to be a 30-second cooldown, which is fine. You settle with a 30-second cooldown rather than no kick, it's fine. But season wins no longer will stack twice. You can't have 30% DR. You'll just be able to cap out at 15% DR. However, it's being simplified. So think in current WoW, if you take a very good, skilled Resto Shaman and then someone who's very new to Resto Shaman, put them both in Priory and put them up beyond the first boss, where all those paladins are, the very good Resto Shaman is going to save their kick for any holy smites. That way, they're going to be taking reduced holy damage, because that's how it works. It works on spell school. If you kick a holy cast, you take reduced holy damage. The new Resto Shaman might kick like a fireball that's coming their way or something. And while that's probably fine to kick a fireball, then you're going to have fire damage reduction. So, there's this like really good min-maxy thing that you could do with season wins in current WoW. They're kind of removing that. They're basically just saying, you know what, it's going to be replaced with Wind Veil, which is just going to be kicking a spell will give you spell damage reduction, basically. So on one hand, for the like more experienced veteran try-hard players that really like to optimize what they're doing, they're basically losing a very powerful talent in season wins. And for the average Joe who just wants to kick any cast that looks kickable, which is fine, they're gaining just a permanent, basically not a permanent, but a very good uptime 15% DR, which is good. So it's gonna be a little bit more beginner friendly Resto Shaman, but it's literally Resto Shaman. How much more beginner friendly can it get? But yeah, like I said, like a lot of these changes are just head scratchers. Now, like I said, it's not all doom and gloom. I think the changes to Healing Rain is just going to be, it's going to last longer, but have a longer cooldown. So basically, it's just going to last longer, which is good, unless your party moves out of it. But it's just going to be less of a maintenance thing that you have to do, is just keep recasting your Healing Rains to keep them up if you're not going totemic. On top of that, I think, admittedly, I truly do believe that of all the Apex talents across all the healers, I truly believe that Resto Shaman has the most exciting one, or at least the most what seems seemingly impactful one. The other ones, like all of the other Apex talents, are just like little passive things that will be nice but won't really change the game for you. But Resto Shamans, basically every time you Riptide, you have a chance to make your next healing stream totem just more powerful and become Storm Stream Totem. And there's a couple talents that you can do to affect, or that you can take to affect the Storm Stream Totem's healing. One of them being that it doesn't consume one of your charges of Healing Stream Totem. So as long as you're Riptiding often, which you probably should be doing as a Resto Shaman, you're going to get a chance to basically make your next Healing Stream Totem not go on cooldown and be more powerful, which is just, it's really, really good. Like, this Apex talent is going to be really, really good. So there are some saving graces. Like I said, you're going to have a kick. You have a lot of quality of life changes, like in Healing Rain and just across the board, making things more simple, like not having 2 spot heals. Now you just have Healing Wave. Those kinds of things are very good, but the pruning is just very, very damaging to all of the greatness that Resto Shaman spent the last few years building up. And then Ascendance, one of the most, like, amazing buttons in the game, is just being turned into this lame stepbrother of what Ascendance could be. So I don't know. I definitely think that this is in the loser category. Is it going to be meta? Probably. I think having a kick alone is going to keep it at least in the meta discussion. But in terms of like how excited I personally am to play this spec, I'm a lot less excited than I was coming into the War Within personally. But let's move on to the final winner of this video. Before we get into the final winner of this video, I just have to give an honorable mention to Mistweaver Monk. While I don't think it's necessarily in the top 2 winners, that is not a bad thing. I think Mistweaver Monk is very easily a 3rd place winner in my book. And, you know, all biases aside, obviously if I were super biased and allowing that bias to take control, I'd make it number 1. But I think 3 is fair. And while I think a lot of people are very scared of what Mistweaver Monk could be, a lot of people think that it's going to lose that melee healer, punch and kick healing identity. I can read the stars. I see that that is not the case. They are showing love to the caster playstyle. That's just a fact. They're adding Way of the Serpent, which is a sick talent, by the way. They're adding a lot of caster benefits. Even the capstone talent, the Apex talents, Spirit Font, want you to be casting Enveloping Mists. So yes, they are adding a lot of love, and then some of these new caster talents are going to kind of bleed into the Chi-Ji playstyle. But I have to remind you, if you've been paying attention to what Mistweaver Monk is doing currently in Season 3 of The War Within, we cast a lot of Enveloping Mists anyways, okay? We do. And just to kind of like say it, because it needs to be said, they've mentioned in their dev notes that they're going to keep an eye on ancient teachings and make sure that it doesn't get to a point where the caster build is outshining and outperforming and basically a necessity over the Chi-Ji punch and kicky build. So I really think there's a lot of doom happening in some very loud voices in certain communities. And I don't know. I can see that, yes, you can show love to the caster community and show love to that play style while not ruining the foundation of what Mistweaver is. And I think that all of these changes are a beautiful job and doing that exact thing. But let's get to the actual final true winner of Midnight, in my opinion. Now, the final winner of this video is probably going to come as a surprise to a lot of you guys, because if you've been paying attention since the first iteration of the alpha announcements, a lot of people have been hating on this spec, but the spec that I am choosing is Holy Paladin, of all things. And the reason why I say that is because if you go to any forum post about Holy Paladin from the first few weeks of the alpha, they are all negative. Like, so many people were down on the first iterations. However, Blizzard over the past few weeks has really kind of fixed a lot of things, fixed a lot of like their rotational spells, fixed a lot, like put band-aids on the things that were broken, and I think it's actually landing on its feet. Now, a good contender for this spot too could have been Presvoker, but I think a lot of the stuff happening with Presvoker is just like quality of life changes, nothing super exciting in my book. However, Holy Paladin already is coming out of the War Within in a fantastic spot. I think it's a very well-designed spec, but I think a lot of the pruning, it's very risky changes. However, like I said, I think these risks so far are looking to actually pay off with the most recent changes that they're doing. So what are they doing? What are these giant risks that I'm talking about? Well, just like every other spec, they're losing some cooldowns. So you basically have to choose between Divine Toll, Holy Prism, but hey, losing Holy Prism, not that deep. They're also removing some pretty like big spell, like some pretty popular spells, like Barrier of Faith. A lot of people like that spell. Blessing of the Seasons is very powerful, has been forever. However, if you know me, if you've watched my streams while I play Holy Paladin, you know that I specifically hate this spell. So I'm so happy to see that go, but I know a lot of people are upset. Like, they're losing some pretty big things, right? But the biggest thing that they're losing, like the most iconic thing that they're losing, is Crusader Strike. I mean, this is like a big leap of faith. Like, Blizzard was cooking when they thought, hey, you know what? Let's remove their most basic ability, you know? Just to put it into some, just to kind of like draw a picture of how big this change is, how big of a risk this is. I want you, if you've ever played Holy Paladin, to think of no. Okay, think of your main. Think of your main if it's not Holy Paladin. So for me, it's Mistweaver. Just for example, think of what button. What is your number? Like, what's your main button on your mouse or your keybinds? For me, like the number one button, the most rotational button that I keybind things to is my mouse button number one. And then number two and three are like kind of the secondary thing. So Tiger Palm is my most rotational button, therefore it is my number one. Rising Sun Kick and Blackout Kick are second and third, so they're my two and three. But number one is like that button that you plan to spam a lot, like Wrath and Rejuve for Druid are my number one. Like just for an example, your number one button is your most important rotational button. For Holy Paladin, my number one button is Crusader Strike. So now that they're removing this spell, I'm like, dude, what am I gonna find that is important enough to keybind as my number one, while not moving my Holy Shock or Judgment over to the number one button? So like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But like I said, I really think that they're landing on their feet. So when they originally announced that they were removing this and the first iteration of the alpha went live, like it just felt clunky. It was like, well, shoot, like without Crusader Strike, how are we building? How's the flow of Holy Paladin gonna keep up with Midnight? And it was really looking gloom. But what they did is they added in a lot of ways to kind of make its absence um, kind of unnoticeable. So they're reducing cooldowns of things like Holy Shock, of Judgment. They're making Infusion of Light, which if you've played Holy Paladin this season currently in WoW, you know that the changes recently to Infusion of Light, making that Flash of Light instant cast, is phenomenal for the gameplay loop of Holy Paladin. The fact that they're making that have more of an impact in your rotation, the fact that Judgment feels more important, you can use it more often. Holy Shock you can use more often, it has a lower cooldown. These things alone make the global that you would otherwise spend on Crusader Strike just never come up, if that makes sense. So you don't notice that you're missing Crusader Strike as much. Now, the one downside, though, that I think a lot of people are worried about is Crusader Strike was one of the reasons why you stayed in melee as this melee healer. So a lot of people are very afraid that this is going to become just another caster healer. Like, why even make it a melee? But for some reason, Icy Veins doesn't really mention it here. But Shield of the Righteous, your damaging spender, is also seeing a lot of love. It's gonna, I think it like shaves time off of your Judgment or something. Like it does some very cool things. So that alone is one other reason that you're going to want to stay in melee, especially in Mythic Plus, because you're going to want to keep those buttons flowing, keep that damage flowing. On top of that, you still have like Consecration, things like that. And on top of all of that, you also they are changing Light of Dawn. It's no longer a cone; it's like an AOE circle around you. It's sick. Okay, one of my favorite spells in this game is Holy Nova. I think a lot of people love playing Holy Nova or like leveling a mage just so you can spam their little Arcane Explosion button. Like we love these AOE spells around ourselves, right? It's just like a scientifically psychologically proven that we love those kinds of spells. So now Light of Dawn is that. It's going to be awesome. You no longer have to aim it at your raid, so it's going to be more worth building around in raid potentially. So I think the avenues for Holy Paladin are set and they're looking good. Honestly, I really do think they're looking good. Just as risky as it is for me to put this as my number one winner in Midnight, I know that Blizzard is taking even bigger risks with how they're reworking it. Now, those like rotational things, that's the majority of your rotation is those rotational mechanics. But the bigger thing that they're changing also, let's see, can I find it? Apex talents. I've mentioned them a lot this season or this video, and their Apex talent is sick. It is so sick. So if you know how Holy Paladin works, they can put a beacon on an ally. So say like, your squishiest, like your hunter that likes to stand and all the swirlies, you put a beacon on them, and now every time that you heal someone else, a little bit of that healing is going to also go to the hunter. Just keep them safer. But the Apex talent for Holy Paladin, ignore this Hulu ad. All the ads in Icy Veins are crazy. But we got to support the WoW. Anything WoW, we have to support them. Keep those ads on. Turn off your ad blockers. It just hurts communities like Icy Veins. But the Apex talent for Holy Priest Holy Paladin is Beacon of the Savior. Basically, it's just a passive beacon that you don't have to, actively apply to an ally. It just roams around to your lowest health ally that's nearby, and once you heal that ally to full health, it'll go bounce to the next person that needs the beacon the most. So it's just a smart, passive roaming beacon that is awesome. That is absolutely awesome for an Apex talent. Awesome for the lore of what a Holy Paladin is, like saving people, literally saving people by the light. Like, it is just such a cool Apex talent. I am so excited to try Crusader Strikeless Holy Paladin. The only thing that I'm worried about is what on earth am I going to keybind to my #1 button? I guess maybe what's even worth it? What's worthy of the #1 slot on your mouse keybinds, guys? I don't know, but this is my list. These are my top 2 winners, top 2 losers, and an honorable mention thrown in the middle. The ones that I didn't mention, Resto Druid and Presovoker, I think both of them are leaning more toward winner in my book. But yeah, I just really quick before we call the video, I do want to say I don't think that any loser in this video is losing so much that they're not going to be fun to play. I think they are just the bottom 2 of 7 pretty interesting takes on what these healers could be in Midnight. I am extremely excited for Midnight, do not get me wrong. And like I said earlier in the video, the beta does open up this Tuesday, this reset. I plan on playing that sucker so much, cranking out videos, testing every single little thing, every little interaction about all 7 healers. So let me know down in the comments which healers you are most excited to see me test, see me play. What builds are you excited to see me play? Maybe a caster Mistweaver build or a caster Holy Paladin build? What are you most excited to see me play and test out? Because I am excited to get those to you. But guys, thank you so much for liking this video, or for watching this video. Like it if you liked it, but let me know what you guys think down below. What are your winners and losers of this tier? I'm excited to read those. But guys, thank you so much for all the support. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care, guys.